Vorfeld organisiert haben und wir hatten das Vergnügen, hier auf dem Panel viele interessante Gespräche zu führen und schließen das mit einem weiteren hoffentlich interessanten Gespräch ab. Wir werden die Diskussion heute hier auf Englisch führen, weil wir einen Gast aus Polen haben und das Gespräch wird auch noch übertragen im Livestream auf Instagram von der Messe und wir werden nachher auch gucken, wenn es Fragen aus dem Publikum gibt, würde ich das dann zwischendurch mal relativ spontan öffnen und dann gucken wir mal. Wir haben uns in den letzten Tagen viel mit dem Thema Digitalisierung beschäftigt, was das bedeutet für den künstlerischen Prozess, für die Arbeit in den Museen, den Institutionen. Heute wollen wir abschließend nochmal auf das Wesentliche zurückkommen, nämlich diejenigen, die die Kunst vermitteln, die Galeristen und auch alternative Messestrukturen und darüber werden wir heute sprechen. So, now in English, I want to present the panel. It's Michal Lasota. You are from the Stereo Gallery from Warsaw. And Michal has invented a new form of cooperation between young galleries in Warsaw called FOAF, Friends of a Friend, Friend of a Friend, which is a special, alternative to the normal gallery work. He will introduce us to his idea later on. Next to me is Silvia Ammon. She has been the co-founder of the Paris International, which is a quite new art fair. Was funded 4 or 5 years ago, right? And it's a smaller art fair which takes place in Paris in different areas, in different buildings, for about 40 to 50 younger galleries to support younger galleries and younger artists. Next to me is Max Meyer. You know him from Düsseldorf. If you're from here, you have been opening your gallery how many years ago now? 8 years ago. So you're still an uprising gallery. This is what normally is the label. And I would like to start with you, Michal. You have created a new form, alternative form of presenting art to a different audience maybe. Why did you do that in Warsaw? How did it start?
Because we are working in a group of people, we didn't invent anything except of doing something already invented in Warsaw. Because we copied Kondo, the format invented by Vanessa Carlos. At the beginning we wanted to do Kondo Warsaw, but eventually we decided maybe it's better to launch something new under a new name. And it's about local galleries hosting international guests, galleries from all over the world. We had guests from France, from Germany, from United States, and it's been already the Friend of a Friend happened twice, in 2018 and 2019. We are already starting to work on a third edition.
So you basically invite the galleries to show in Warsaw, in places that you...
Yes, there are 8 host galleries and about 16 galleries coming from abroad. So altogether it's 24.
And what is the aim of Friend of a Friend? What are you trying to do? Is it to establish a different system, or is it to establish a system at all? What is the idea behind?
It's rather the second. It's to develop the local scene in Warsaw and to place the local scene in an international context, I would say.
Another alternative is co-created by Silvia Ammon. The Paris International was established as an art fair to not compete with the other art fairs, I guess. It's rather to create something new. What was the idea behind the Paris International?
So I think that we didn't invent anything either. So it's still an art fair that was initiated and co-founded by 4 galleries from Paris. We felt that there was space in Paris to do something additional to FOAF in October and something with our own rules. What's very important for Paris International are the low participation costs. The fact that we are in...
it's also non-profit, is it?
Yeah.
It's a different system behind, so it's not the idea that people have to kind of pay a big fee and that you give a challenge to the younger galleries actually to present their younger emerging artists, right?
Yeah. So it's gallery initiated, self-organized, and it's very important to us to not waste the money that we get with the fees of the participating galleries. The galleries still pay for the participation as we are paying to rent the building, etc. But we keep the participation cost as low as possible. We also wanted to go away from the often similar exhibition halls and invest more domestic buildings that offer a more intimate setting for the artworks and the encounters between the gallerists and collectors. And the third point that is very important to us is to keep the number of galleries small. It depends on the building, but it's usually around 40, 50 galleries maximum, which simply maybe enables the collectors to remember what they actually saw, and also leads hopefully to more in-depth conversation about the artworks presented.
Max, you opened your gallery, as you just said, 8 years ago. When you started to think about, do I open a gallery? It's a courageous thing to do, we know that. Did you just, and you have obviously a strong art background, but why did you decide to open a gallery?
Of course, there were many reasons, but I would say the most important one was really being close to artists, admiring their work, and it was very much that moment in time when you said like, okay, this is, there's something interesting happening. People are doing interesting work. These are my friends, and if I don't open the gallery right now, I'm gonna miss that moment in a way. So it was very much this. It's always courageous to open a business, I think. Maybe in the gallery sector, a special type of courage that you need, but it's, of course, like all of this is very much like a momentum, and I just wanted to be part of it.
Because since you've opened your gallery, the art scene has changed a lot towards the big, almost corporate gallerists. We have a number of, say, 5 to 10 galleries in the global market who are in some ways actually ahead of everybody else. And it's more and more difficult for smaller galleries to survive. So we have alternatives there as well. How would you describe the situation for you as a younger gallery in this kind of situation you're in now?
I'm super thankful for the current situation right now, because what is so special about gallery share models like Friends of a Friend, like Kondo, like Okidoki, a fair like Paris International that is run by us, like our generation. When you compare this to a situation like 10 years ago, we were all facing a situation where, as a young gallery, you do fairs were very important because they show a certain, I don't want to say hierarchy, but they show, let's say, a place where you are, like in
the ranking.
I don't want to say rank, but in some type of, international, non-local scene. And of course, that is important. And I remember, in the 2000s, young galleries were really faced with that challenge that when you apply to Art Basel, you apply to Fries, you apply to FOAF, it's the generation of galleries above you that judge who are the young, interesting galleries. And sometimes they were right, many times they were not right. But you couldn't really, they really had a lot of power over of like representing this type of, I really don't want to say ranking, but like a certain position in the international kind of network. And I think the very, very, very important factor what like gallery shares and a fair like Paris International led to is that we are much more independent in terms of like judging our colleagues, in terms of judging like who is actually interesting, and it's like it's the generation, like it's us ourselves that like we have the power again to kind of like represent that from within our peer group. And I think that's a super crucial big difference. I think we're all much more independent in terms of, you know, getting into FOAF, getting into upheaval, getting into FOAF and stuff. Like 10 years ago, like you had to do this in order to show your importance.
I think that's a very interesting point, especially compared to Warsaw, because in Berlin, for example, where I come from, we could see the dying of younger galleries for the past 10 years quite heavily. Great, fantastic galleries with a great program, but they had no chance to survive because of financial reasons. So is that possibly a future that corporations, solidarity as such, is a system whereby younger galleries and then implying younger artists have a better chance to survive?
Yes, I think so. Yes, I think so. But, you know, the context in Poland and in Warsaw, because it's enough to talk about Warsaw when you talk about art market, art world in Poland. It's a bit different. It's really hard to compare Berlin and Warsaw. For example, there are only two galleries which are older in Warsaw. It's Raster Gallery and Foxal Gallery Foundation. They both have around 15 or 17 years, and that's it. They're still not, you know, old, right? And they are also taking part in Friend of a Friend. So we don't share experiences. They are more experienced. They are older, but they are older colleagues. So that's why maybe you're right. We are on the beginning, right, of the road. We don't have the system in Poland is not that stiff. There is no hierarchy, like you would probably easily describe in Germany.
Yeah, what Max just said, that there is a hierarchy between the established galleries, and then, you know, it goes step by step into a different
Of course it is. There is a huge difference, right, between Foxal Gallery Foundation representing Monika Sosnowska, Wilhelm Sassner, and all the many names of established artists, and, for example, Stereo. We are still working with of course we are getting old, and our artists are getting older, but they are still not on the same level. Foxal Gallery Foundation was able to put their artists. We are only following Foxal.
Silvia, what's your experience at the art fair? Because just to give you an example, when you have a stand here at the art fair in Düsseldorf, you have to make a lot of money to actually be here. So you have to sell a lot of money to be here. I think stands here cost between 25 and 40,000 euros. So you have to have established artists to actually finance that. When it comes to the art fair that you are directing, is it something that gives a bigger freedom to galleries, but also to artists to be actually maybe more cool because you don't have this financial pressure?
I mean, that's certainly what we are looking for and encouraging by keeping the costs down. I think it's pretty difficult for young galleries to survive in this. It's like, on the one hand, it's very important to participate to a lot of fairs and be present internationally, but it also takes a lot of energy and financial resources. It's often difficult to even break even when you show young artists that are not selling for that much money. So yes, the costs at Paris International are between 4,000 and 7,000 approximately. It always depends on the building we get and the costs that we have to cover, but yes, offering these financial condition is certainly, I mean, the goal is certainly to encourage risk-taking and to enable galleries to not only show their best-selling artists, but also the artists that they maybe couldn't show at fairs that are more expensive.
But what would be the future for galleries showing at the Paris International? Because obviously when you start some kind of alternative idea, there is a point where you think as a gallerist or as an artist, I have come to a certain point in my career now. Do I go onto this road of alternatives, or do I have to be more established and maybe then change towards another system, say represent myself at a bigger art fair or something like that? Is that the idea, that maybe they step onto somewhere else then, or is that still open?
I think that's actually the big question that Paris International has to ask itself. Do we want to be branded as a young fair that is a kind of stepstone into other fairs, or are we more like a generational project that stands for a different economic rules and another way of existing in this business? Maybe I could ask two of our participating galleries how they see.
I don't know the answer.
I hope for the second. I really hope for the second.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about this where, like, for me as an exhibitor of Paris International of the last four years now, this is it's a very important fair for my annual year, where this is. I hope that you'll define it that way, that this is a fair that I can grow with, that this is like a fair that this is, fits very well to my program, fits very well to the age of my gallery, and I think all of us, but I can only start with myself saying we should have great interest in creating alternatives also like in the future of our careers. This should not be a stepping stone, but I don't see a reason why I should want to end up in 5 or 10 years in the situation where I'm just replicating the fair structure like it was 10, 15 years ago.
But it's interesting in your case because you are part of both art fairs, so you have the alternative art fair and you have the Art Düsseldorf now in this current situation. What does it mean to you? What kind of program do you choose? Does it differ, the one that you show in the alternative space and the one that you show here in a much more established surrounding?
I mean, I have to say, this fair is great and I love it, but like so established. I mean, it's not so established that.
But
like,
from the artist and gallery side,
it's. Of course, like for every fair, every year, I think about it in a new way. Of course, like you have different narratives. The Art Düsseldorf narrative is a different one than the one in Paris because the audience is extremely different. You're always like in relationships to the booth that you've made, and you kind of, when you're lucky, quite early on you get a feeling for like what works in what context, what audience resonates with what type of work you bring, and then you build on that. But it's not that it's not this like dualism of these are white walls and this is like established and Paris International is like so young and sort of it's even in terms of price points. I brought works to Paris International that was much more expensive than works I'm showing at Art Düsseldorf right now. It's not that easy to separate the two.
I mean, is the art fair, I mean, we have learned that I think we have over 300 art fairs in the world by now, in every single country, continent. How important is it for you as a gallery to be part of the art fair system? Because obviously the way that you try to establish another system apart from the art fair to reach your audience by inviting people to your city and to interchange with other cities and to get an idea of an cultural exchange. Is the pressure not very strongly put onto you as a gallerist by now to be on art fairs?
Yes, of course, there's pressure. I think there's also pressure on collectors as well. I mean, there's pressure on everyone, like, who's participating in this, like being a seller or buyer or just like interested audience. Because it's so big, you have to make very specific decisions. Like, what is of interest to me? Where do I see my program resonating as a collector? What is a fair in which city where I think what interests me, is shown? And it's become so big that, like, I think we're almost like at a point where you need to try to almost find like different words for these structures and for these fairs, because they like vary so greatly that it's making choices, and of course that's not it's not easy, and it takes time and also work. But I think there's still an importance of this. It's not as black and white saying this is the only reality in commercial art world that is possible, or this is totally bad and we should go to something else. But it's you have to make your own choices, and your reality is different to your friend's reality.
I mean, you've mentioned this before in Warsaw. It's a complete different situation, and you don't have so many galleries. You don't have this kind of economic force behind this system that we have here. Is this a chance, or is the chance bigger or the risk bigger? How would you describe the situation looking back at the years now that you've done and tried alternatives?
I think the chances are bigger, and there is a lot of risk of all people running galleries share similar concerns. I mean, what Max has said. All before I would sign up to this, also in regards to the reason why me and my partner opened a gallery. But our situation, it was easy to find a friend of a friend, as it is in Warsaw, because it was a bit easier than anywhere else, I suppose, to make this experiment and replace competition with cooperation. It was really easy to convince this bunch of galleries that we should do it. And these are simple principles we would like to share. The main, that we're gonna be generous to our guests, that we don't compete in the frame of this event, that we will introduce gallerists to each other, collectors to galleries. These are all simple things which are, I don't know if rare, but these were principles for us, setting up the friend of a friend. And so far it worked out. And we are doing another experiment, taking part in an art fair here, sharing 120 square meters booth in 7 galleries, and it's okay. It still works here.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because you established this very interesting alternative project, and now you're here at this kind of classical art fair. Is this a contradiction, or is it just kind of something else that you think to establish your other alternative a bit more to a wider audience?
I think it's just an adventure. I can't see any contradiction to what we are aiming. Like I really think experiment, maybe it sounds too serious, but it is an experiment. For us, also for the community we are living in Warsaw. We are having a trip abroad together. that's always, you are checking characters of your colleagues and friends. You learn a lot.
I imagine. Silvia, when you look at the young galleries that that are presenting their booth at your art fair, what is your impression? Is it a good time at the moment to, start a new gallery, to become part of this kind of really global, very pumped up market?
Well, I don't know how to answer this question. I think.
So do you have enough applicants who want to be part of the fair, which would show an idea of that there are still a lot of younger people around who dare to do it?
Yeah, we definitely have a lot of applicants and people that want to participate and be part of this group. And then for starting a gallery, I think it's most of the time really a labor of passion and the people who do it, they just need to do it because the constellation around them seems right. So is it a good or a bad time? Probably not the easiest, but has it ever been easy to start a gallery? I'm not so sure about it. So.
It was not easy to open a gallery in 2009, but I have done.
What would you say, Max? Would you open a gallery nowadays when you think of the past 8 years?
Yes, I mean I don't have an alternative, so that's just I would of course do it again. I think it's made. I mean it's like such an interesting time because it's so separated. Also, of course, I mean you say it right. There's a lot of money that is spent in the market in general, but the market as like a big word is also, I think, very misleading. I think especially in Germany, what is conceived of, the art market is actually not very healthy because a lot of people think this is, it starts with 6-digit numbers and it's like only for millionaires, and it's. I think there's actually a lot to be shaped by like a young gallery that opens today, because you could really, when you open a gallery right now, you can very much like tackle these problems much more than when you've been running since like 6, 7, 8 or 10 years. And there's actually, I think, a lot of potential to, really, not replicate like the way you do a gallery, but there's a lot of like differences that you could, and different choices you could make when you open a gallery. And sometimes like you kind of wish you could do it again in a way, but it's.
Yeah, I was wondering, I mean, 8 years is some time, and obviously when you start the gallery, everything is new, you do it with your friends or, with your kind of pure passion, and now 8 years have gone, and obviously also, I imagine you as a gallerist, you have to make a decision, which direction do I want to go? Do I want to become bigger? Do I want to stay the way I am, which means that maybe I can't represent certain artists because they are maybe too expensive? How would you describe the point of professional life you're right in at the moment?
I mean, I just decided to move into a bigger space, so I guess that's very,
the next step.
Very obvious right now, I guess. But the question of growth is a very specific one. I think there's, especially in Europe, I think we're like very well off not just defining growth in terms of square meters or in ceiling height. Or I think growth is like, for me, I would say I think I'm more interested in growth, for example, in terms of staff. Actually, like I would like to employ more people. I think, the arts in general, the commercial part of the artwork, even more, that we are part of a general time and, general questions that everyone is facing. And I think the redefinition of what growth means in the system that we're living in is very, very obvious and needed. And I'm thinking about that. Not every day, but maybe every second day.
but just to finish this point, how do you actually access a different audience? So, I mean, we are here at an art fair where my impression is that there are lots of different people, especially during the weekend. You have the pre-opening on Wednesday or Thursday, and then you have the kind of, the collectors are coming. But what I like is that it's an atmosphere which is seems to me very open. So you have a lot of people who are just interested in arts, and maybe they step on a bit further and maybe they buy something. How do you actually create your audience? How do you make people convinced to visit your gallery?
To be honest, I don't want to convince anyone. I think what is very important is that like what galleries should bring across much more active is that we are contributing to a local kind of exhibition and art scene on a free and non-entrance fee base. I mean, I don't know about that, but like in Düsseldorf we have 25, 30 galleries, amazing exhibitions, and like everyone can visit those for free. I think we're contributing to a cultural experience and landscape. I want to be accessible. I want to be inviting, even if you want to say so, but I don't want to convince. I mean, I'm doing what I believe in, and I'm happy when people come. And when they come, I try to make them come again. That they, feel challenged and feel welcome, and all these things. But it's convincing is not mine.
I mean, Nicole, how is it for you in Warsaw? Because obviously we have a strong tradition here in Rhineland, Düsseldorf, Cologne. I mean, this is, art cities. So people are used to going to exhibitions. They're used to being in cafes and restaurants and bars where you meet artists. You have the Kunstakademie. And how difficult is it for you in your country to inspire people to get interested in contemporary art, because you don't have that kind of tradition?
Yeah, but we are just doing our job. I agree with Max. There is no way to convince anyone who is not initially interested. Even if it's for free, I wouldn't advertise my show like this, that it's for free, so please welcome. But it's very important just to do your work and be part of a cultural landscape of the city. This is what we are doing. But actually the main part of our audience, and I think we all share this experience in Warsaw, that these are artists and students. So this is how we how we are inspiring the audience, because there is a direct connection between what we are doing and what artists are doing. And they are following people whom we are exhibiting, for example. Right? From time to time there is a strongly influential show, and people are talking about it. And, community is, I don't know, I wouldn't count it, but a few hundred people, right? But it's enough to say that it's not small, and it's a lot of people still to share thoughts and to inspire each other. I definitely define my gallery as a cultural institution.
So when I understand you correctly, it's a lot about dialogue. It's like, an open space for thought and for perception and for making people interested, and maybe also losing fear to become interested in arts. Because often there are people who think, it's just a certain group of people who's interested in the arts or who can afford art. I think that's often the problem, that you have some kind of fear to overcome this little border.
Yeah, it's all because of Hollywood movies about contemporary art.
Yeah. And when you look back at the years now, do you get the impression that you reach people who haven't been interested in contemporary art before? Do you have a growing interest in collecting art? How is that in Warsaw?
Yes, that's true. There is a small group of young, wealthy people which are coming, visiting shows and buying something from time to time. That's good.
And how is your experience, Silvia, when you look at the people who are coming to your art fair? Is it a different group of people? Is it like more open? Is it also younger? Or is it just, how would you describe the audience that visits your art fair?
I think the audience is pretty varied. Of course, I mean, I think the fact that such amazing galleries are trusting us brings us a high quality audience of collectors. A lot of curators all over Europe come for the fair every year. And then it's for sure that the younger generations come more easily to Paris International than maybe to other fairs. I know that artists actually enjoy to be there, whereas in other fairs they maybe don't feel that this is the best place for them to hang out. And then in terms of publics and trying to like grow and new collectors, this is of course something that we are trying. I think the fact that we are in different kind of locations maybe helps with that. And yes.
I mean, the surrounding, I think, is also is playing a major role when you invite people, right? So can you describe us a bit more what kind of spaces you offer to your audience? Because I think that is often also the case, you have the White Cube Museum or the White Cube Gallery, white walls, and everything sometimes feels a bit sterile maybe. So what places do you offer to the galleries you invite to Warsaw?
There is one thing I should explain. Friend of a Friend is a gallery share, so each hosting gallery has its own space. So these are spaces we are sharing with international guests, right? So there is no one space. That's another problem we are dealing with. I mean, all galleries in Warsaw are constantly looking for another location, right? We are in a move.
The political representatives, do they support the gallery system? Do they support artists? Because one major problem or she can work. How is it in Poland?
I don't know how it is in Poland. Warsaw has a new mayor, and he's from the opposition party. So it, of course, puts us in a good position because we are free-thinking people and work to be supported. And friend of a friend is what is important, maybe a detail but important. Friend of a Friend is free of charge because it's fully funded by public institutions. It's the city of Warsaw and Adam Mickiewicz Institute, the institution which is established to promote Polish art abroad.
And is there also within this idea the idea that once you invite somebody that you are re-invited back to the country where the gallery comes from?
There is no agreement like this.
Because that
we are just hoping that we will become a closer colleagues. Maybe something's going to happen later out of it.
Right.
That's the thinking behind.
Because what I was saying earlier, that for example in Berlin a lot of younger galleries have closed down over the years. How do you perceive it in Düsseldorf or Cologne, the younger galleries? Do you exchange information? Do you have some kind of, because in the end it's a business also, and you have to survive, and not you as a gallerist, but also the artists. I mean, how would you describe that? Is it more competition? Is there an openness towards each other, or is it both?
I mean, I don't want to compare it to any other city. What I'm happy about is that right now in Düsseldorf, Cologne, and probably outside of as well, there's kind of a crucial amount of 5, 6, 7, 8 colleagues my age, who all hold like very specific and quite different positions, you know, in terms of their program. And what, you know, like, I mean, the comparison with, you know, many other cities, you know, Brussels is, you know, much closer to the Rhineland than Berlin, for example, you know, led to a different type of, how can I say, self-understanding. You know, it was much more, it was like obvious that like no one cares about, you know, Düsseldorf on its own or Cologne on its own. It was like very obvious, like when I started and like for also my friends and colleagues that, you know, like it's actually kind of embedded in the almost like geographic structure of the Rhineland that this is like very important to happen. Because if you make it smaller, it really doesn't matter. But if you kind of look at this area as, you know, like one larger kind of urban cultural sphere, it actually can be quite important, and it can hold like, you know, good stuff and opportunities also. So I'm happy to be part of that.
I mean, what sometimes happens is when younger galleries basically show younger artists, you start from the scratch, you know, everybody does. And obviously the younger artist is not known to everyone because you are the one who makes this person known and the work known to a wider audience. But sometimes it happens that some of these artists become really successful and then they think, well, you know, this is a great gallery and I really like the galleries, but now I have an offer from a bigger gallery, which is, you know, has a lot of franchise galleries in other cities and maybe I have more opportunities and they commission work and things like that. How difficult is it for you to be at a possibility of that situation?
I mean, it has happened to me, and it's, you know, I mean, this is like a very good example of like of a thing that makes this profession so special. Like you can explain that this is like, it comes down to your relationships to the artist, and you know, whether you have good relationships and they stay with you, or they're not good enough and they leave. It's really a personal thing. That's like something you can't teach, you can't learn. It's about you and that other person. And it's, I mean, that's also kind of, I think, the beauty also in this. But that's, at the end of the day, this is what it comes down to, and this is why, you know, every gallery is so specific and different, because it's just made up of people. Of course, they're all different.
I mean, it's probably also the other way around. I mean, you have decided to move into a bigger space, which is obviously also great for the artists because you have a new space. How difficult is it sometimes if, I mean, it's like when you are a writer and you write a book and sometimes you have this kind of Schreibhemmung, I don't know the English term, but when you can't write anymore. So artists know that as well. You know, they go through phases. They can be very productive and at times they have to reinvent themselves. How difficult is it for you as a younger gallerist who has probably not the money to kind of, you know, in the storage where you can cover all these kind of situations where an artist says, well, I'm sorry, I have only 2 works per year. I can't do more at the moment. How difficult is that for you?
I think that's probably, again, kind of the same thing. Like you really need to be close to the people you're working with and get a sense for, you know, what moment they are. Like, can you ask a solo show of that and that artist? Can you ask for work to bring at a fair, or whether you should maybe keep a distance and that, you know, and just wait for, you know, a better time? I mean, that's basically a situation that I don't want to say I'm faced with it every day, but at least every week. You have to reflect on this, like, where am I right now, where is everyone else, and how do I make my decision in terms of programming, who can I offer work to, but it's never like a static thing. It always changes, and you always have to follow it.
Because this is what I sometimes experience with the younger galleries, that you start off as a family, as friends, but then the longer you go, the more business comes into the relationship. And things change there as well. So you become the more established gallerist, and maybe you're not so much the friend anymore, but more the one who's also the business partner now. Is that an interesting development within your work, that you see things change in this direction too?
Yes, and I'm really fighting for this not involved like influencing my relationships too much, because it's always like the more money you have in human relationships, the more tainted they are. That's just how it is. It's power, and to create. It's also like in the relationships to the collectors. It's obvious that this is like a medium of power relations that we all need to deal with, and you have to address that. You have to talk about it. I think we all need to talk about money much more, not just for money itself, but like dealing with it and being like saying like it's between us, and let's talk about it.